While I was squinting through my reading glasses trying to figure out how to repot the plants on the balcony, my phone started vibrating on the table. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Evan. Right beside it was a photo of him holding baby Simon, both of them grinning so wide it felt like the sunshine had spilled right into my living room. My heart softened in an instant. I set down the little trowel, wiped my hands on my apron and quickly picked up the call. "Mom." Evan's voice came through, low and hurried, laced with a tiredness that had just a hint of childlike pleading. "Are you busy these days?" I chuckled. "I'm retired, sweetheart. What could I possibly be busy with? You, on the other hand, you sound wiped out. Trouble at work?" "No, not work." He paused, and in the background I could hear the faint, fragmented whimpers of a baby. "It's Lara. He's really worn out. It's been nonstop with the baby day and night. He barely gets any sleep. She's lost so much weight." Before he could finish, Simon's cry suddenly pierced through the line, sharp, high-pitched and straight into my ear. Evan let out a long sigh, heavy with exhaustion and helplessness. "You hear that? When this little guy gets going, no one stands a chance. Mom, we're really at our limit. We need help." In that moment my heart tightened, pulled by the sound of my grandson's cries. He's barely over 3 months old, still in that soft, cuddly stage that melts your insides just from a photo. That little round face in the picture had already made me smile more than once. Lara had a C-section, and after the birth I had wanted to help. But her mother was staying over then and I didn't want to overstep. Now that her mom had gone, it was clear the two of them were in over their heads. "I'll be there," I said without a second thought. "Don't worry. I'll pack a bag tonight and buy a bus ticket first thing tomorrow. It's been years since my husband passed. The house has been quiet, too quiet if I'm honest. So the chance to see Evan and the baby, to be useful, to be needed again, well, that warmed something deep in me." After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, heart full, already making mental notes. I'd need to bring a few small gifts. Maybe some breathable cotton onesies for the baby, something soft and comfy for summer. And those organic cloth diapers I got from a friend a while back. So much gentler on the skin than the store-bought disposables. For Lara, I remembered she once mentioned she liked those collagen gummies. Said they were good for the skin. I'll bring a few boxes, just right for postpartum recovery. As I moved around the house, pulling things together, that little ache of loneliness I'd been carrying seemed to dissolve into the buzz of anticipation. I even dug out an old parenting guide I'd saved, thinking I could brush up on how to make baby food or soothe colic with gentle massage. After all, I raised Evan myself. Now that he has a child of his own, how could I just stand by? Helping out isn't a chore, it's an honor. Even if it meant putting this old body to the test, it would be worth every ounce of effort. I could already picture it. 3 generations under one roof, the sound of laughter echoing through the halls, a sleeping baby curled up against my chest. Just the thought of it made me smile. The next morning I stood outside Evan's house, dragging a bulging suitcase behind me and cradling a gift bag in my arms. Inside were boxes of collagen gummies for Lara and a few soft, breathable onesies for baby Simon. My heart was full of anticipation. The door swung open and Evan's familiar, beaming face peeked out. "Mom, you're here. Come in, let me grab your bag." He took the suitcase without missing a beat and parked it off to the side with casual ease. I leaned past his shoulder, taking in the living room. It was relatively tidy, but the air held that unmistakable scent of baby formula and diapers, laced with something damp and sour, like the stale remains of exhaustion and anxiety that had long settled into the walls. Lara emerged from the bedroom holding the baby. She wore a loose house dress, her hair tied up in a messy bun. Her face was pale, with dark circles shadowing her eyes. She glanced at me with a blank expression, gave a faint nod and murmured, "Chloe, you're here." Her voice was neutral, not warm, not cold, like someone greeting a distant neighbor who showed up unannounced. No smile, no welcome, just nothing. The warmth in my chest fizzled like a match dipped in water. Still, I forced myself to brush it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe it wasn't personal. I quickly pulled out the gift bag and held it out to her. "Lara, I know you've been run ragged lately, so I brought you some collagen gummies. They're supposed to help with skin recovery. Thought it might give you a little boost." She took the bag without looking inside. "Thanks," she said, her tone flat. Then she turned and disappeared back into the bedroom, gently shutting the door behind her. I was left standing there, hands still midair. For a second everything went still. The silence hung awkward and heavy. Evan scratched his head, looking sheepish. He rubbed his palms together and tried to redirect the moment. So, here's the thing, he began, hesitating. We're kind of tight on space right now. That little guest room's still full of stuff from Lara's pregnancy. Some baby gear we haven't used yet, the old crib, just clutter we haven't gotten around to. He glanced toward the corner of the living room. So, for now, would you mind crashing on the couch? Just for a few days. I'll clear out the room this weekend and set it up for you. He pointed at the gray fabric sofa. It looked clean enough, but it was still just a couch. I followed his gesture and my heart gave a dull thud. The couch? In the living room? I hadn't come for a vacation, I knew that. I'd traveled all this way to help them with the baby. But not even a room with a door? Just the living room? No privacy, no quiet, just a shared space that would double as my bedroom? Any way you looked at it, it felt rough. The thought crept in uninvited. Am I just a live-in maid they didn't have to pay? But then I caught the look in Evan's eyes, that mix of apology and desperation. He stood there like a boy who knew he'd done something wrong but didn't know how to fix it. I swallowed the lump in my throat, tamped down the sting in my chest and managed a small smile. I patted his arm gently. It's fine really. The couch is wide enough. I'm just one person, I don't need much. Go do what you need to. Don't worry about me. Relief flooded his face. He looked like someone who'd just dropped a 50-pound backpack. Thank you. Really. Let me get you some water. He disappeared into the kitchen. I eased down onto the couch, my fingers grazing the coarse texture of the fabric. That quiet disappointment rippled through me, like a stone dropped into still water, sending out waves that didn't quite stop. Maybe he really would clear out the room this weekend. Maybe I was just reading too much into everything. Still, the way things felt, I couldn't help but wonder if they saw me less as mom and more as nanny deluxe. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. That first night I got a real taste of what making do meant. The couch faced the sliding glass door to the balcony. It had a screen, sure, but in the heat of summer mosquitoes might as well have been airborne ninjas. That high-pitched buzzing circled my ears like a one-note concert in a closed room. My arms and legs were peppered with bites, itchy, red, and tender. Worse yet, there was no separate air conditioning in the living room. June in Connecticut can feel like a sealed sauna. The window had a mesh curtain, but I didn't dare open it too wide. Those bloodsuckers could sniff out body heat faster than a heat-seeking missile. I lay there sweating, skin clammy, every inch of me sticking to the cushion. And the couch itself? A betrayal in upholstery form. It wasn't a bed no matter how wide. Every time I shifted I had to be careful not to roll off the edge. The springs creaked with each movement, loud and jarring, like someone banging pots in a silent kitchen. Sleep was impossible. Add to that the fact I'd spent half the day on a long bus ride already worn out. And now here I was half awake all night, listening for Simon's next cry through the bedroom wall. I don't think I slept a single wink. Before the sun was even up, I heard that all too familiar sound, sharp, urgent cries that pierced straight through the quiet and tugged at something deep in my chest. I got up right away and tiptoed toward the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Lara was holding Simon close, rocking him gently. Her forehead rested against his, brows furrowed in exhaustion. Evan was still lying in bed, completely still, sound asleep. Lara glanced up and saw me. Her expression froze for a second before she spoke, her tone edged with annoyance. "Chloe, why are you up so early? Did we wake you?" "Oh no, not at all. I was already awake," I said softly, trying to keep my tone light and easy. "I heard the baby crying and thought I'd check in." She didn't return my smile. Just said flatly, "He's hungry." I was about to feed him. Then she turned her body away, a quiet signal that I wasn't needed, or welcome, any closer. I backed out quietly, retreating to the living room, my footsteps suddenly cautious, as if afraid I'd step on something fragile. Over the next 2 days, I became the house's unofficial full-time nanny. Lara breastfed the baby, but everything else, burping, diaper changes, rocking him to sleep, cleaning up the endless messes, was all on me. Simon had the kind of energy only babies seem to have. He couldn't stay asleep for long and demanded to be held the moment he stirred. I paced the living room over and over with him in my arms until my back ached and my arms felt like they were cast in concrete. As for Lara, she spent most of her time holed up in the bedroom. She'd say she was recovering, But more often than not, I'd see her scrolling on her phone, giggling at videos or tapping out messages with both thumbs flying. On the rare occasions she did emerge, it was to give instructions. Chloe, the bottles need to be sterilized. Chloe, don't put the baby's clothes in the washer. They have to be hand-washed. Chloe, the floor's getting dusty. Can you give it a quick mop? Every word landed like a task list handed down to a housemaid, clinical, cold, and without so much as eye contact. Evan still wore his usual easy smile, but he was out the door early for work and didn't return until evening. He'd give Simon a perfunctory tickle, hold him for maybe a minute or two, then hand him back and collapse onto the couch to zone out in front of the TV. Or he'd disappear into the home office with a half-hearted, "Gotta catch up on work." I never expected him to be hands-on, but seeing him dodge responsibility with such practiced ease still left a bitter taste in my mouth. Mealtime was its own small humiliation. Lara did the cooking. Her dishes were bold, heavily seasoned, garlic, black pepper, jalapeno hot sauce. She and Evan called it flavorful. For me, with my sensitive stomach and years of sticking to mild, gentle food, it was overwhelming. Most of the time, I could only pick at a bit of salad or plain pasta while the rest of the table dug in happily. Eventually, I tried to speak up. "Lara, my stomach's a bit sensitive. Next time you cook, maybe you could make something a little lighter? Maybe a simple soup? Or skip the chili." She didn't even look up from her phone. "Chloe, you'll just have to make do. I'm exhausted taking care of the baby. I don't have the energy to cook separate meals. If it really doesn't work for you, you can eat out." Her voice was calm, almost polite. But the message was clear. "You're lucky we're feeding you at all." The sweat trickled down my temples in the stifling heat, and watching her so casually dismiss me made something balloon inside. Resentment, sadness, I don't even know. Like dough left too long to rise, it swelled until it pressed hard against my chest. What was I even doing here? I came all this way to help, to be part of their family's joy, to contribute. But now it felt like I was paying off some ancient debt with my body, like this was penance for sins I didn't remember committing. By day I was the baby wrangler. By night, mosquito bait on a lumpy couch. Mealtimes felt like a gamble. Maybe there'd be something I could eat, maybe not. It had only been 3 days, but I felt like an old mutt, worn thin and breathless. And yet the hardest part wasn't the aching limbs or sleepless nights. It was feeling invisible. Like I was just a placeholder. A gap filler. A tool to be used but never truly seen. By the third afternoon, the heat had become unbearable. The air was so still, not even a whisper of a breeze stirred the trees outside. Sunlight poured in through the windows like liquid fire, turning the entire house into an invisible oven. The humidity clung to the skin, thick and suffocating, making it hard to breathe. Simon must have felt it too. He cried nonstop, his little face flushed bright red, sweat beading on his forehead and the tip of his nose. I walked him in circles through the living room, fanning him with a handheld fan, but it did nothing. He kept squirming in my arms, his cries soft but persistent, those pitiful whimpers that made my heart ache. His face was so red it scared me. On the wall hung an old air conditioner, dusty but intact. It looked like it hadn't been used in a while, but it still seemed functional. I hesitated for a moment, then picked up the remote, telling myself I'd only turn it on for a little while, just enough to cool things down for the baby. I was soaked in sweat, my shirt sticking to my back like wet paper. I clicked the button. The machine hummed to life. A gentle stream of cool air drifted out, soft and refreshing. Within minutes, Simon quieted. The relief was immediate. His eyelids drooped, his tiny fingers found their way to his mouth, and soon he was peacefully dozing off in my arms. I exhaled in relief and was just about to sit down to finally rest, when the bedroom door suddenly flung open. Lara marched out, her steps quick and her brows tightly furrowed. She must have heard the AC kick on. Without a word, she stomped across the room and slapped the power button on the unit. The fan stopped instantly. The cool air vanished, replaced in a heartbeat by the thick, oppressive heat. It felt like someone had yanked away the last bit of air I had left to breathe. I stood there holding Simon, stunned, almost thinking I had imagined it. Then she spoke, sharp, loud, and completely unfiltered. "Chloe, do you have any idea how much electricity that thing uses in just 1 hour? We're already drowning in bills. Formula, diapers, the mortgage. We don't need to be throwing money away running the AC all day. Use the fan. That's more than enough for a baby." Her tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a scolding. Dismissive. like she was chastising a housekeeper who'd stepped out of line. She didn't even look at me, just stared at the unit like I'd committed some financial crime. For a moment, all the blood rushed to my head. My ears rang. I couldn't even hear the rest of the house, like someone had stuffed cotton in my skull. It wasn't about the electricity. It wasn't even about being reprimanded. It was the fact that I had been holding a baby who was flushed, sweating, uncomfortable, and all I had wanted was to ease his discomfort. That small act of care, of instinct, had earned me a public shaming. I looked at her, opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. My throat had locked up tight. The humiliation, the anger, and something colder, disappointment, sorrow, rose up in one great wave and crashed over me. I stood there soaked in it, like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my heart. It wasn't the AC that got shut off. It was the part of me that had come all this way out of love, out of devotion, out of the desperate hope that I still mattered. And she had slammed it to the ground, then stepped on it like it meant nothing. Lara didn't wait for a reply. She spun around, went back into the bedroom, and closed the door behind her with a firm thud. And there I was, still in the middle of the living room, holding Simon, who had just calmed down and was now beginning to fuss again as the heat wrapped around us like a wet blanket. The air felt solid with silence. I could barely breathe. My eyes stung, but I refused to cry. Tears wouldn't help me. They never had. They'd only make me look small, weak, pathetic. Instead, I carried Simon to the sliding door. There, at least, a faint breeze sometimes crept in through the cracks. I picked up the fan again and started waving it back and forth in slow, mechanical strokes. Simon shifted slightly in my arms. His little brows furrowed, his face still flushed and damp, a mirror of how I felt inside. I looked down as he finally drifted off. His breath was soft and even, his tiny hand curled into a fist against his cheek. He was beautiful. So innocent. So helpless. And the more I looked at him, the more my heart ached. What had I gone through these past few days? Sleeping on a couch, my legs covered in mosquito bites. Eating meals that upset my stomach while being told to just make do. Spending every waking hour caring for their child, cleaning their home, running around without pause, only to be spoken to like a hired hand. And now, scolded for turning on the air conditioner, for trying to help their baby. 3 days. That's all it took to wring me out like an old rag. But it wasn't just the exhaustion that hurt. It was being treated like I didn't exist. Like my help, my presence, my love, were all things to be used, not appreciated. Not even acknowledged. I had come all this way. For what? Because they were young, overwhelmed, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could lighten the load? But they didn't see it that way. Everything I did was expected, assumed. My kindness wasn't kindness to them. It was duty. Obligation. Because we were family. Because blood is thicker than water. I had dreamed of warm, noisy dinners. Of baby giggles and sleepy cuddles. Of being part of something again. What I got was sweat, silence, and a growing ache that no one even noticed. That old saying, the greatest sorrow is a heart gone cold, used to sound so dramatic. But now I understood. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was the slow freezing of everything inside me. I didn't want to argue. Didn't want to yell. What was the point of fighting with someone who didn't hear you? Someone who only saw their own exhaustion, not your effort? In that stifling, airless room, something in me went still. And in that stillness I made a decision. That evening, once Evan got home from work and Lara was tucked away in the bedroom nursing, I pulled him aside. I kept my voice calm, soft, careful not to let the weight of the past few days bleed through. Evan, I said quietly, I'm heading home tomorrow. He had just taken off his jacket. His hands froze mid-motion as he turned to look at me, surprise flashing across his face. What? You're going back? So soon? Mom, you've only been here a few days. I thought you were planning to stay longer, help us with the baby. I avoided his eyes. Something came up back home that I need to take care of. And, it seems like Lara's got things under control. I didn't mention the air conditioner. I didn't bring up the couch, the food, the commands barked like orders. There was no point. None of that would change anything now. Evan's brow furrowed, concern creeping into his voice. Mom, wait, is this because Lara said something? Did she upset you? You can tell me. I'll talk to her. She's a little short-tempered right now, but she doesn't mean anything by it. Don't take it personally. I shook my head, managing a tired smile. It's nothing like that, Evan. Lara and I are fine. Really. I just have my own life too, and there are things I need to handle. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but the words never came. He nodded slowly instead, lips pressed tight. The next morning, before sunrise, I had already packed my things. There wasn't much, just a few changes of clothes, my toiletries. Everything I'd brought for them I left behind. Evan stood by the front door, his eyes a little red, trying one last time. Mom, you don't have to rush off. I'll clean out the guest room today. I'll get you a Royale bed. Please just stay a little longer. Stay comfortable. I shook my head gently, my voice warm but firm. No, Evan. It's time. You've got a full-time job and Laura needs to grow into her role as a mom. It's important you two learn how to manage on your own. Even to my own ears, the words had a finality to them, a quiet line drawn in the sand. I won't be coming back to help like this again. But I knew it was what I needed to say. Laura never came out of the bedroom. Maybe she was still asleep. Maybe she just didn't care whether I left or stayed. Oddly enough, that made things easier. At least there was no need for pretense. Evan drove me to the bus station. The car ride was quiet, thick with unspoken things. He opened his mouth a few times, only to sigh and fall silent again. Just before we pulled up to the station, he reached into his wallet and pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills. He handed them to me, sheepish and hesitant. Don't be mad. Lara's just been overwhelmed. The baby's been so fussy and she's not herself. She didn't mean to be harsh. Here, please take this. Buy yourself something nice. I looked down at the money, a tangle of emotions rising inside me. Was it an apology? A payoff? Did he truly believe $200 could balance out the sleepless nights, the mosquito bites, the cold shoulders, the feeling of being invisible? I didn't take it. I gently pushed his hand back, my voice steady, though something between us had quietly shifted. I don't need it, Evan. Really. I have my own money. You hold on to it, you'll need every penny with a baby in the house. He didn't argue. Just folded the bills back into his wallet, his eyes downcast like he couldn't quite figure out what to say anymore. When the car rolled to a stop at the curb, I opened the door and stepped out, not giving him a chance to follow me inside. Call me when you get home, okay? He said softly from behind me, a note of uncertainty in his voice. I will, I answered, pulling my suitcase upright. Then I turned away and walked into the crowd without looking back. On the bus, as the scenery slid past in reverse, my heart grew still, quiet in a way it hadn't been in days. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was peace. A calm that came not from comfort but from clarity. When I turned the key and pushed open my front door, the familiar warmth of home rushed to greet me. The sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, spreading golden light across the hardwood floors, making them glow like honey. The stillness of the house felt like a long-overdue exhale. I stepped into the bedroom and collapsed face-first onto my bed, letting my body sink into the mattress. I took a deep breath. The scent of fresh laundry and sunlight lingered in the sheets. It smelled like peace, like something that belonged to me. The past few days at Evans felt like a strange, sobering dream, part absurdity, part awakening. I sat at the edge of the bed, eyes drifting up to the photo of my husband on the wall. His gentle smile stared back at me, warm and steady. In my mind, I could almost hear him saying, "Don't wear yourself out. Come home and rest." I spoke to him quietly in my heart, a whisper of confession, a tender goodbye. I remembered how we'd scraped and saved to help Evan buy his house. Back then my husband was still alive. We drained our retirement fund to cover the down payment. He's just starting out, we'd said. Life's hard enough. Let's give him a leg up. After my husband passed, I kept holding the line on my own. When Evan and Laura couldn't keep up with the mortgage, I offered, no, insisted, on covering $3,000 a month. And I kept it up for over 2 years. I believed that giving would earn gratitude. That love would beget love. But now, looking back, I see it clearly. The more I gave, the more they came to expect it. Not as generosity but as obligation. To the point that, in their eyes, this aging mother didn't even have the right to run the air conditioner for her overheated grandson. Those 3 days weren't just exhausting. They were clarifying, like a bucket of ice water dumped on a delusion I'd cradled for years. I used to believe that unconditional love for your child was something noble. Now I know that some people will never thank you. They'll only resent you for not giving more. The end of the month was approaching. Time to make that familiar transfer. I sat on my couch, my soft, clean, warm couch, and opened my banking app. The balance wasn't huge, but it was mine. It was the security I'd built for myself over a lifetime of saying, I'm fine, and I don't need much. As I stared at the screen, memories played like a reel. Lara's cold eyes as she shut off the AC, Evan's guilty silence, my sleepless nights on that narrow couch. Was it worth it? I whispered the question aloud. The answer came immediately. No, it wasn't. My finger hovered over the familiar transfer page, but I didn't press it. Instead, I opened a travel site. Searched for short trips along the Portland coast. Then I browsed through the community college catalog. Intro to illustration, beginner's pottery. I made up my mind. That money I used to send them every month? From now on it's going to me. Not for Evan. Not for Laura. Not to help make things easier. But for me, a woman who spent most of her life taking care of everyone else and finally deserves to take care of herself. To sleep well. To eat what she likes. To live like a person, not a shadow. Even if it's just a new pair of walking shoes. Or a quiet dinner I don't have to rush through. That's not selfish. That's dignity. The days that followed were quieter than usual. In the mornings I'd stroll through the park, chatting with the neighborhood ladies about their grandkids and garden projects. In the afternoons I'd water the plants on my balcony, letting the sun warm my arms. Evenings I curled up on the couch with the TV humming in the background, and slept through the night without interruption. That calm wasn't something I forced. It came naturally, like a knot slowly untying. Because for the first time in a long time, I was no longer clinging to the illusion of being needed. And in that release I found a gentler kind of freedom. 2 or 3 days after the end of the month, Evan finally called. The moment I picked up, I could hear it in his voice, that cautious, tiptoeing tone that meant he wanted something. Mom, did you maybe forget something? I was holding the spray bottle, gently misting the plants by the window. At his words, my hand paused midair, but my voice stayed steady. No, I didn't forget. Why? He hesitated. Well, you know, the mortgage. His voice dropped even lower. You haven't transferred the money this month. Oh, the mortgage, I echoed, setting the bottle down and stepping out onto the balcony. The garden below was in full bloom, clusters of roses lighting up the space with color. I let my gaze settle there, speaking softly. Evan, I've thought it over. From now on, you and Laura should handle the mortgage yourselves. The silence on the other end was instant. So complete it almost sounded like the call had dropped. Kept going. You both have jobs now. You're earning decent incomes. It's time you learn how to carry the weight of your own home. My retirement fund didn't fall out of the sky. It came from decades of hard work, saving penny by penny. I need to hold on to what's left, not to splurge, but because someday I might get sick or need care. I can't afford to have nothing when that day comes. And besides, life's not just bills and errands. I want to take a pottery class. Maybe head up north for a few days, stand on the shore and listen to the ocean. Is that too much to ask? The silence stretched longer this time. So long I almost thought he'd hung up. Then finally his voice came back, flustered, sharper than before, with a thread of irritation he couldn't quite hide. Mom, what are you even saying? We had an agreement. You said you'd keep helping until I got promoted. You can't just stop out of nowhere. Do you know how tight things are this month? That's $3,000 just gone. We can't cover that overnight. It wasn't a plea. It was an accusation. Like I'd broken a contract. Like I'd pulled the rug out from under them. I almost laughed. This was what it came down to. After everything. After the couch, the cold leftovers, the barking commands, and that blank stare when I turned on the air conditioning for their baby. Promises go both ways. So does respect. Evan didn't stop. He rattled on about how expensive the baby was, how stressed Laura had been, how they were doing their best. Then more hesitantly, Mom, this isn't still about that AC thing, is it? Come on. That was nothing. You're not still upset about that, right? I cut him off. My voice wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear, calm, unshakable, final. This isn't about being upset. And it's not about punishing anyone. It's about clarity. Evan, you're in your 30s. You've got a job. A family. It's time to step up and act like a grown man. Take responsibility for what's yours. I helped you at the beginning because I loved you, because I knew how hard starting out could be. That was grace, not obligation. But now, you're stable. You're earning. That house, your house, is your debt to carry. That's your duty. You say it's hard. Of course it is. Nothing about life is easy. But you can't keep leaning on me every time it gets uncomfortable. I can help for a season because I wanted to before. But I won't carry you forever. And frankly, I've earned the right to start living for myself. There was silence again. Only the sound of his breath, heavy and uneven, crackling through the line like static. After a long pause, he muttered, "Oi, I get it." Then click. The call ended. I stared at the darkening screen, still warm in my hand, and let out a quiet sigh. This wasn't over. I knew that. Lara, with her pride and sharp tongue, wouldn't let it go. Not without a storm. That much was certain. But for now, at least, I had drawn the line. And I was finally standing on the side that belonged to me. Sure enough, it didn't even take half a day before my phone lit up with a call from an unfamiliar landline. I stared at the screen for a moment, and deep down I already knew who it was. I answered calmly. "Hello. Chloe. What the hell is this supposed to mean?" Lara's voice exploded through the speaker, shrill and sharp-edged, her fury slicing straight through the line. She must have realized I'd blocked her cell and had gone out of her way to call from a different number. "You think you can just back out like that?" she snapped. "You promised to help Evan with the mortgage. Now you just decide to stop just like that? That's not right, it's dishonest." Her voice cracked from the sheer force of her anger, as if I'd committed some unspeakable betrayal. As if stepping back from their finances wasn't a decision, but an act of treason. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pressed my palm gently against my knee, grounding myself in that simple warmth. These were the same hands that had rocked her baby to sleep, scrubbed her dishes, folded her laundry, non-stop thankless. But she didn't stop. "Do you even realize how much we're spending right now? Formula, diapers, bills piling up. This mortgage is suffocating us. And you're just going to walk away? Just like that?" She paused for breath, then barreled on as if trying to overwhelm me with guilt. "You promised, Chloe. You said you'd help until Evan got that promotion. What are we supposed to do now? Just magic up $3,000 a month out of thin air?" Her words hit like darts, one after another, each one sharpened with resentment. Liar. Irresponsible. Selfish. So I said nothing. I let her vent, let it all tumble out. I could hear the desperation beneath her rage. She needed someone to blame, and I was the easiest target. I wasn't going to interrupt her moment. But as she ranted, my mind drifted back. 3 weeks ago, the stifling heat of that living room, the baby sweating and crying in my arms, Lara walking out to switch off the air conditioner with a cold flick of the wrist. We can't afford the electric bill. Now here she was accusing me of being heartless, of abandoning them. Yet when I was the one standing in their house, sweltering, sleep-deprived, eating scraps and working like a ghost in the background, where was her concern then? Their idea of helping us out had never been a partnership. It was a one-way pipeline. I gave. Then they expected more. Finally I spoke. My voice was steady, calm, like I'd rehearsed it in my mind 100 times. "You're right, Lara. I did decide to stop sending the money. But it wasn't impulsive. I've thought about it for a long time. I helped you because I wanted to. But now I've decided I need to help myself." There was a pause. A short silence, heavy and tense. Then came the next wave, harsher, more frantic. "That's low, Chloe. Seriously. You're doing this just to make things harder for us? If we default on this mortgage, do you even understand what that means? Are you really prepared to take that kind of responsibility?" Her voice had a new edge now, not just anger but something darker. A warning. A threat. But I wasn't rattled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match her tone. I just answered quietly, firmly. "Lara, that responsibility was never mine to begin with. That house was your choice. Your loan. Your obligation. Being Evan's mother doesn't make me your financial safety net. I gave what I could when I could. That was kindness, not contract. I owe you nothing. And you're right about one thing, your life is hard. Raising a child, keeping a home, making ends meet, that's all real. But it's your life to figure out, not mine to fund. I'm not punishing you. I'm just done pretending I have no limits." There was nothing but silence. No yelling. No protests. Just a dead halt, like she'd slammed into a wall she didn't expect. Then the call dropped. I sat for a moment holding the phone in my lap, watching the screen fade to black. It was still warm from the call. My fingers were steady. My chest oddly calm. I thought that might be the end of it. That maybe finally we'd drawn our lines and walked our separate ways. But of course life rarely lets you off that easy. Something told me, Laura wasn't finished. Not yet. It all started with a phone call from a neighbor. That morning I had just gotten back from the community college ceramics class, a small lump of clay in my hand, my first attempt at a teacup, still damp and misshapen but mine. I was setting it out to dry when the phone rang. It was Carol, an old friend and longtime volunteer buddy from church. Her voice was low, like she was holding something in. "Chloe, is everything okay with your daughter-in-law? Laura came by the rec center today. Said you cut them off financially and called her a freeloader. Said you accused her of bleeding the family dry and driving her into postpartum depression." My hand jerked. The teacup nearly slipped from my fingers. "She said that at the center?" I asked. "She said it in a few places," Carol replied. At first I didn't pay much attention. But today she came back and doubled down. "She's telling people you told her, and I'm quoting, 'I'd rather donate to a stray dog than give another dollar to your house.' She's even showing people pictures." "Chloe, did you really say that?" I closed my eyes for a beat, pressing down the rising heat behind them. "Thanks for telling me, Carol," I said, my voice calm. "But no. I didn't say that." "I didn't think so," she sighed. "But people are talking. Saying you're cold, cruel. That you've turned your back on a poor new mom." After we hung up, I opened the community group chat on my phone. The group was called Sunnybrook Neighbors United. Over 100 members. I scrolled up and found it quickly. Laura had posted a screenshot of a private message. It was a chat log showing a message from me. "Sometimes dogs are kinder than people. At least they know how to be grateful." And beneath that she'd written, "Some people think I'm a dog, apparently." The post was already lighting up with likes, shares, and concerned comments. I closed my eyes again. I remembered the message. It was mine, sent privately to an old friend the day I finally cut off Evan and Laura. That friend had texted me, "You're too soft." I'd responded, half joking, half bitter, "Sometimes dogs are kinder than people." Never once did I think that message would end up plastered on the town's bulletin board. And then there was another post. A photo of the cotton onesies I'd handpicked from the mall last month, back when I still believed Laura might someday say, "Thank you." Now they were listed on a resale platform. The caption read, "Brand new. Never worn. Gift from Emile but way too outdated. DM if interested." I stared at the screen, my heart sinking into something heavy and cold. I'd spent an entire afternoon picking those out. She hadn't said a word of thanks. Just posted them online to sell. I didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't try to clear my name. I left the group chat. Silenced my notifications. Cleared the contacts I no longer needed. But Laura wasn't finished. 3 days later I ran into her outside the grocery store. She was holding the baby in one arm and dragging a shopping cart with the other. She positioned herself right beside mine, her voice low but biting. "Well, Chloe, are you happy now? Everyone in the neighborhood is talking. You've really stirred the pot." I didn't say anything. Just reached for a bunch of bananas. She kept going, her tone sharpening. "Why do you have to tell people I'm a parasite? You think it's fun for me to walk into the post office and have people stare like I'm trash? Even here, people look at me like I'm dirt." I glanced at her. So I said nothing. She leaned in a little, eyes narrowing. "Aren't you even a little afraid? That someday Simon will grow up and find out what kind of woman his grandmother really was?" That stopped me. I looked her square in the eyes, and for the first time in days, I let my voice carry. "No, Laura. What I'm afraid of is Simon growing up and finding out how his mother treated the woman who once held him while she slept through the afternoon." She froze. I pushed my cart forward a few steps, then spoke again, not looking back. "I'm not your item. I'm not your maid. If you want to insult me, lie about me, sell the things I gave you, fine. But don't think I'm going to keep bending over and handing you pieces of myself to stomp on. Simon's not an orphan. And you're not crippled. So stop pretending you need rescuing." Her cheeks flushed with anger. "What do you want from me?" I stopped. Turned. Looked at the baby in her arms, small, wriggling, squirming toward the sunlight. Then I softened, but only just. "I don't want anything," I said. "I just want to live my life. Sleep in the bed I paid for. Spend the money I earned. Go where I want, eat what I like. You think I don't love Simon? I love him more than I can say. But I'm done letting that love be used to climb over me, just so you can curse me for being in the way. Then I walked into the store. Behind me I heard Simon's whimper, the start of a baby's cry. Laura didn't follow. That evening I slipped into my loungewear, put the kettle on, and prepared a basin of hot water for a quiet foot soak. The steam rose in gentle curls, and for the first time in a long while, my little home felt calm, almost untouched by the noise of the past few weeks. Then my phone buzzed. It was Evan. We hadn't spoken since that day at the store. His message was short. Mom, I'm sorry. I know Laura went too far this time. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. But I didn't reply. Apologies are nice, but this one had arrived too late, too cold. For the past 2 weeks, my days had felt almost unreal in their quiet. No messages. No phone calls. Not even a passing mention from Carol. It was like the storm had finally settled, leaving only distant ripples in its wake. Until that afternoon. I was sitting on a park bench watching the wind rustle through the trees when my phone buzzed again. This time an unknown number. Mom. The voice on the other end was shaky, frantic. It's me. Simon has a high fever. It's nearly 102 degrees. He's out of it and I don't know what to do. It was Evan. His voice cracked. I've been trying to reach the hospital but can't get an appointment. Lara's not answering my calls. I don't even know where she is. I don't know what to do. My heart clenched. Where are you? I asked. I'm coming right now. He gave me the name of the hospital and I grabbed my bag without a second thought. I didn't think about the past. I didn't think about what had been said or unsaid. All I knew was, my grandson was sick, and I was needed. The year was chaos. Children's cries echoed through the halls. Evan stood in line at the triage desk, sweating through his shirt, arms aching as he held a limp, red-faced Simon against his shoulder. The baby's little hand dangled, barely gripping his father's collar. His tiny body burned with fever, his head resting against Evan's neck as he let out soft, pitiful whimpers. Evan's eyes darted between the endless line ahead and the pale, sweating child in his arms. He looked like a man unraveling, overwhelmed, helpless. Then beside him a small movement caught his eye. At the neighboring desk stood an older woman, hair silver, wrapped in a navy cardigan that hung loose on her thin shoulders. She was bouncing a feverish toddler gently in her arms while digging through her bag for an insurance card. At her feet were a child's backpack and 2 bulky packs of diapers. The child rested against her shoulder, eyes red and glassy, lower lip trembling from recent crying. The woman whispered gently in his ear, "Hang in there, sweetheart. Grandma's gonna get you signed in. We'll see the doctor soon, okay?" Evan froze. It hit him like a flash. A memory. He'd been that feverish boy once. In a hospital. At night. Crying. And she, his mother, had been the one standing for hours in that very line, holding him with one arm, paperwork in the other. She'd knelt to give him water. She'd whispered comfort even as her own eyes looked heavy with sleep. She'd stayed up all night for him. He hadn't remembered until now. His throat tightened and a strange heat rose behind his eyes. He looked down at Simon, his own son, burning with fever, clinging to him for comfort. And for the first time the apology came, not to his child but to the woman who wasn't there to hear it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Simon had been admitted. He was curled up against my chest, his little face flushed, his breath shallow. One small hand clutched at my blouse like an anchor. Evan sat beside me, his shoulders slumped, silent. After a long pause he finally said in a hoarse voice, "Mom, I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't look at him. My focus stayed on Simon. "How long has the fever been going on?" I asked quietly. 3 days, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Laura said it was just a little cold. I believed her. Thought it would pass. But this morning he wouldn't wake up properly. That's when I knew it wasn't just a cold. I nodded once, saying nothing. Evan let out a long sigh. "Laura. She was at a friend's gathering the other night. I didn't push it. I didn't think, God, I didn't think." I turned to look at him then, my eyes steady, sharp. "Your father, Evan. Your son had a fever for 3 days and neither of you did anything. You kept going to work. He went out partying. And all that time your baby was burning up." His head dropped as if all the air had been let out of him. Like a balloon punctured clean through. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Laura was living through the most humiliating moment of her life. The day before, she had proudly posted a photo to Facebook. She was dressed in a stylish camisole, lips glossed, posing with a group of girlfriends at a trendy cafe. Caption read, "Being a mom doesn't mean forgetting who you are. A child isn't an excuse or a cage." The comments rolled in fast. "Hot mama. Love your glow. Motherhood looks good on you." Laura smiled, tapped a like and leaned back pleased. But then a new comment shot straight to the top. It was from her old college roommate, now a pediatric nurse at a local hospital. She wrote, "Funny, your kid's in our year right now with a 102 fever. But sure, go ahead and be yourself." The thread went dead silent. One of the women at the table, someone Laura barely knew, glanced at her and said flatly, "Maybe stop complaining about your mother-in-law not helping. Seems like you're not even helping yourself." Laura froze, her cheeks draining of color. The brunch fizzled. She didn't say goodbye. Just grabbed her bag and bolted out the door. She didn't go home. Didn't go to the hospital. Instead, she sat in her car scrolling through old photos. Most of them ones she'd once rolled her eyes at. One in particular caught her. A picture of Chloe holding Simon upright, gently patting his back to burp him. It was a photo she'd deleted ages ago, called it boring, clingy. But somehow it had restored from a backup. She stared at Chloe's expression. Soft, patient eyes full of care. She remembered mocking her. Calling her too much. Recalling the day she posted those baby clothes Chloe had bought. Too old-fashioned, she'd said, trying to sell them online for a few bucks. Someone had haggled the price down to less than the cost of a coffee. And just like that, something in her cracked. She sat there in the car crying for 2 full hours. Her makeup streaked down her cheeks. Her voice went hoarse. The next night I was still in the hospital with Simon. He'd finally broken the fever. His breathing was deeper now, more even. He was curled against my chest, one hand loosely holding onto my shirt. Evan dozed off beside me. I hadn't slept. At around 2 a.m. my phone vibrated. It was from Laura. Not a call. Not a text. An email. The subject line was blank. The message was shaky, scattered. An apology stripped of excuses or charm. She wrote, "I blamed our problems on mother-in-law drama, when the truth is I was lazy. I lied about what you said. I sold the clothes you bought and laughed about it. That was wrong. All of it. I'm not a good mom. I haven't been a decent daughter-in-law. I know it's too late, but I hope you believe me when I say, I finally get it now." Attached was a photo. An old snapshot of the two of us laughing in the kitchen, flour on our hands from baking cookies together. It had been a genuine moment. A good one. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I set the phone face down on the nightstand and closed my eyes. In the weeks that followed, Simon had a few more fevers, as babies often do. But this time, Evan and Laura didn't call me in a panic. They figured things out. Sometimes they'd text me, "Mom, does this look like a rash? Should we alternate Tylenol and Motrin?" I usually answered. But I started answering later. On purpose. Not because I was angry. Because they needed to try first, on their own. Laura sent messages too. Short ones. Polite. Never warm but not biting. The sharpness in her tone had faded. I didn't ignore her. I just didn't rush to smooth things over. I didn't rush to do anything anymore. We weren't fixed. But maybe we were moving in the right direction. The plants on my balcony had bloomed again. I repotted every one of them, carefully loosening roots, trimming leaves, refreshing the soil. That evening, the sunlight poured across my living room floor in soft streaks. I curled up on the couch with a cup of tea and flipped through the travel guide I'd once abandoned halfway. And for the first time in a while, I understood something deep in my bones. A good life isn't about surviving. It's not about sacrificing until there's nothing left. A good life is one where you don't need to beg for space to breathe. Where you don't need to earn kindness. Where you take care of yourself, not to prove a point but because you're worth the care. I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't planning to leave again. But I wasn't the same mother who rushed in at every cry. I wasn't the woman who overextended to avoid loneliness. I wasn't the invisible force holding up a household in silence. I was me. The relationships in my life were still healing. The child I loved was still growing. And my days, My real, full, rich days were just beginning. Only this time I was living them for myself.